Well, hello, welcome back to the radio room. Finally got a chance to get back to the first 101 that I was working on 8-10 months ago. Had a little time, so I got out here and did some work on it. I figured I'd kind of go over and kind of go over what I've done to it, what work I've done on it as well. If you remember from way back, several months ago, I started a video series on this radio and then got into doing some other radios and working on some other stuff for some folks. Back then, in those videos, I cleaned the inside and the outside of the radio, blew it out, got in there and kind of cleaned the chassis off. Pulled all the boards out, cleaned all the cards and the card sockets. Went through and cleaned a lot of the potentiometers and the band switches and the mode switch and everything like that. Got the oxidation off of them. This radio actually had accumulated quite a bit of oxidation, probably just from sitting. Switches not being turned and everything. And then after doing that, we had done a quick just see if it turned on and if it even did anything, and we did have it receiving fairly well at that point in time. But then we decided it would go ahead and do a electrolytic capacitor kit, and had changed all those out. So all the boards have all new electrolytic capacitors in them, and I also changed the Mylar capacitors on the audio board since they were all cracking and stuff. That kind of where that stopped. I started working on some other radios. We got the 101 in, we got the 101 double E in. Got those back. They're back with their owner. Working good from what I understand, so that's good. About the past week, I've been working on this. Let's see, this is Friday. I think I started last Friday. Not constant, but definitely several hours a day working on the radio, trying to finish up a few things. Finished up with some more of the capacitors. There were several chassis capacitors, low voltage ones that needed to be changed, so I got those changed out. I also, on the regulator board, let me go over to a different view here. On the regulator board right here, there was some high voltage caps in there, or I call them high voltage, medium voltage. They're like 250 volt capacitors that needed to be changed on this. In the double E video series, I had to change those as well because they were starting to swell. These didn't look like they were swelling as much. They looked like they might have started to. So it never hurts to change those out. So I got those changed. They're the new black ones down there. There's a lot more room in this area if you'll notice that. Got those changed out, and also changed out the high voltage caps, and I'm actually going to call them the high voltage caps. They're like 500 volt caps. I mean, let me just kind of show you everything I've changed here as far as capacitors. There was a few lower voltage caps, kind of like these, but got these out of there. These are the original HV caps that were sitting down in here. As you can see, it's quite a ways down there now. You can see I got HV written on those. Somebody in a previous comment had mentioned that these could have high voltage right here, which is true. Those are actually in series with each other in order to get the voltage up, capacity up. And they also form a little bit of a voltage divider, it looks like, between them from the way they were wired in there. So one of these could have 350 volts on them. I had thought about maybe cutting the end off of the plastic off of this, then putting it on there. I didn't want to cover those vents. If something should happen and those need to vent, I didn't want anything sitting on top of them as far as sealing that. Of course, if they vent, it's probably not going to make a difference what's in the way. But and they're down there pretty far. I mean, you almost got to be wanting to touch them to get down in there and touch them. But HV, high voltage on there, if I'm looking at them, if I'm working on the radio or something, it's going to at least give me a reminder that there might be some high voltage sitting right there. So let's see here. I also, like I said, here's those that were down here, and they're a lot bigger. So there's a lot more room in that area. Let's see, the funnest one. Whew. This one is a fun one to change. Let me kind of give you an idea where it's at. I got this radio pretty much mostly put back together. Really getting ready to try and get it back on the air. And like I mentioned a long while back, I kind of talked to the previous owner, and the first contact that's going to be made on it after it's all done was going to be with him. So, well, I lost the capacitor. That one capacitor I just showed you, wherever it went, I didn't sit underneath the radio, did I? Nope. Got way too much stuff on my disc here. Anyhow, that capacitor goes basically right there, underneath that plate. And there's just a little compartment about that big. Lots of wires and stuff inside there. Let me show you a little bit different picture of that. So it's down in there. That's this compartment right here. So that would be that'd be sitting like that, So right there, like that. You can't really get that out. If you'll notice, this is a pretty tight area, and that capacitor is sitting right there. With this ELF, that should be TC or T105, I believe. Normally sits right there. You can't get a soldering iron down in the bottom of there. You have to pull the whole coil and everything out because it is soldered to the bottom plate right there. There's no way to get down in there and unsolder that, and even if you could or unsnip it or something like that, you still have to get down in there to solder the new one in. So I undid the connections to this, lifted the whole plate out, and this is it without the capacitor on there. You know, soldered that back on there, set everything back down, and then reconnected all the connections to the coil and, you know, where the capacitor goes, all down in that hole right there. So it was pretty tight, but you know, a little patience and a little focus, and it's not too bad to get through. You also notice down right in here, I do have the bottom sides of those new caps. Got those changed out. Another thing I did is, and first off, I want to point out one thing that I need to do. This wire right here, this red wire that's running from T12 transformer, it's going up to the microphone jack, to pin 4. 101s don't have anything on pin 4. This right here is a choke that is in the 13.5 volt service for the radio, the voltage for the service. It runs the pilot lamps, the filaments, stuff like that. So what I'm thinking is, it looks like somebody tapped it here and ran it over to the microphone connector because they wanted voltage on one of the pins for the microphone. I'm guessing maybe they were running a powered microphone or something. The microphone needed power, so that they ran it over here so they could get 12 volts basically over there. I'm going to take this out. I don't particularly like voltage sitting on my microphone connector if it doesn't need to be, particularly because this particular mic jack, it is key just like any other 4-pin mic, but the little key is not as big as some microphone jacks. You can put the microphone connector into that the wrong way. So you have to be really careful and make sure the key is lined up with the key. But if you don't, it's not good to have 13.5 volts running up to it. So I'll probably just pull that out, and it won't be in there. This cable right here actually goes back to the patch jack, which it's supposed to be going up there. Let's see here. What else have I done? Let me turn this back over. Get my little deals underneath there. There's two two screws that stick out on the bottom of this thing, and my little black mat here, you probably can't really see it, but there's lots of tiny little holes in it all over. That's from setting down 101s. Them things, I mean, they only poke out about that far, but they'll pop the tops at least. So trying not to do that any more than I have to. I did change the plate choke. Let me grab the old one. So that's down in here. That has the caps that go to the two tubes for the plate side. One of the previous videos I pointed this out, that I didn't really like the looks of the old one, and here's the old one. It's dark. It looks so pretty cruddy and everything. I found another one on eBay, so I decided that I'd go ahead and change it. Got that changed out and put in here. As it turns out, when I was working on with the other 101s, I had used the tubes out of this to try and test another one just to verify maybe the tubes were good or bad. I didn't even know if these tubes were good. The tubes that were in there were good. So, but I did get this changed out, and I also have two new old stock 6JS6Cs sitting in here. Want to just go ahead, what the heck, if I'm working on all this, I might as well put some new tubes on it. I've kept the old ones. I'm sure they still work. If I'm in a pinch, I can always put them back in there if something were to happen to these, but I'm really going to be trying to be gentle on these. But got that changed out. That was a little bit of tight spots in there, but this wasn't actually too bad. Let's see here. Let's see if I can move you all down here. If y'all also remember, there was a knob, the load knob. I don't know if I can do this and still have enough light here. Yeah, that works a little bit better. The load knob, the shaft was broke on it. And I'm not really sure where I put the old one. So here's part of it. Y'all remember that shaft, that red shaft that was sitting right here? Well, it was broke. I tried to glue it, and then it broke again, and not even in the spot that I glued it. So this thing was pretty fragile. But a 1/4-inch acrylic rod I found on Amazon. Put that in there, and it seems to work real well. So a little bit different for a 101. It doesn't have the red rod there. This one's actually a transparent, clear acrylic rod that I put in there, and it seems to work pretty good. Let's see here. While I was working on this, I'd done a lot of the work on it, getting capacitors changed out. Of course, that rod changed out, the plate, new tubes put in there. I did load the radio up into a dummy load, and it just checked output. And it had good output. It loaded up good on all the bands. Had 100 watts out on all the bands. So then I went. I'm just doing this all into a dummy load. I went over to plug the microphone into it to see how the sideband, single sideband output worked, and it was not very good. I could have the mic gain turned all the way up, and I'd get 10 watts out. I'd turn on the processor, and I'd have to crank this all the way up, and then I could finally get the thing to start swinging to 95, 100, 105 watts. I'm like, okay, well, that sounds like an RF processor problem. If you remember, in the E's, they come with the processor, which is right here. The RF processor. This was an option on the double E and the EX. This is the newer board that came out for the E's. You could get a different board that you could put into the B, and I believe you could actually put it into the original 101 if you wanted to. You had to add the switch on the front for those because they didn't have the processor switch, I don't believe. So I started thinking that this had a problem in it, and there's actually an alignment to do this. You know, you test RF voltage here that's coming in, you check what's coming out, set this to 30 millivolts coming in here, and make sure you have 30 millivolts coming out here, and I couldn't get any voltage here. I was using an oscilloscope to test it because I don't have an RF probe for my voltmeter. And any of the voltmeter RF probes that I was thinking about possibly doing a DIY, you know, homebrew circuit for, even with germanium diodes, they got a forward voltage drop of about 1/4 of a volt. So measuring below 1/4 of a volt, especially down below 100 millivolts, you start losing accuracy, and it's not a relative measurement you're making here. It's you need to set that for 30 millivolts when you're doing the testing. So I'm like, well, heck, you know, I'll just use the oscilloscope and you know, measure how big the signal is. Do some measurements with my oscilloscope, and we'll be good. I could not get anything here, no matter how hot of a signal I put into the microphone or how far I turn the microphone gain up. I couldn't get anything appreciable here. But I knew something was going through here because there was some output of the radio. It might have been just 10 watts. So I was really banging my head against the wall on that, trying to figure that one out. Was checking things here, trying to make sure everything looked good. Everything seemed fine. I was like, well, okay, well, I'm gonna start tracing the signal through the radio. And in a previous video, I'd actually done a little bit of tracing on a 101 for the microphone and the output. There was a sideband problem on one of the previous radios. And I could get from the microphone connector, obviously, and I put, like, you know, about a 10 to 15 millivolt signal into the microphone connector. Of course, the microphone connector, good. Go through the audio board to the output of the audio board, good signal. I go into the modulator and oscillator board, you know, checking the wire to cross over there, it's good. I get to the output of the modulator board, and I don't have anything that I can detect on my signal tracer, which isn't terribly sensitive. But I know there's something coming out, but it should have been at least pretty much what was coming into the board. So I started thinking, okay, well, in the 101, there's a couple of things that are in the way, you know, between input and output of the modulator board. For one, you got the ring demodulator. It's basically 4 diodes, and that in conjunction with a variable resistor and a transformer, it mixes in right around a 3.6 megahertz, I believe it is. Don't quote me on that. Signal in with it that it's going to normally would send to the IF section after that, but in this case, the RF processor is the next step after that. So I pulled this board out. This is the modulator board right here, and started checking things on it. Started making sure that it didn't have bad solder joint on it. You know, was it coming down from the pin? Was it making it up to the ring demodulator? Was it making it kind of through the demodulator? There's also a transistor that could possibly be bad, which I looked at on a previous radio that had a similar problem. And it could have been out. but I wasn't really thinking so. I just didn't think that the transistor was out. But continuity between everything looked good, so there wasn't any broken solder joints. Another thing I had noticed is it seemed like I had a little bit of carrier on my output. I went, okay, well, the balanced modulator is what does the carrier suppression, and it's part of that system in the side, in upper sideband or lower sideband. It's in that chain that the microphone audio is going through. So I'm like, well, I'll do a carrier suppression. I'll see if I can get the carrier suppressed. Maybe that's throwing something off on the audio getting through there. So I hooked, got the loaded back up on the dummy load, had a receiver going on the side, and was trying to get rid of the carrier. And you do that basically by adjusting these two right here. There's a trimmer cap and a variable resistor right there. Well, I couldn't really get the carrier suppressed, and I was turning this thing from one end to the other. The only thing I get was some crackle. So I was like, well, maybe this potentiometer is just dirty. That's why I can't suppress the carrier. So squirted it down with some deoxit, let it set a couple of seconds, worked it back and forth, and then I could start getting carrier suppression. And finally did it as much by ear as I could. Then I actually did a tap off the output with the mic gain all the way down, obviously, over to the oscilloscope, and then watched the oscilloscope and got that carrier as far down as I could. And I think I was doing it in lower sideband. You can do it in either sideband. Once I got done with that, I was like, okay, now I'm going to go back to tackling why do I not have sideband output. So I hooked my signal generator back up into the front of the radio, tuned the radio up, gave it a little mic gain, and I had power output. I had good power output without the processor on. So that dirty variable resistor right there not only was causing me not to be able to do carrier suppression, it was also making it so that I couldn't get my audio through the modulator board to the RF processor. Once we got that going, I could set the RF processor right according to the way the manual does it. So not only do we have good non-processed single sideband output, we also have processor output as well now. So thought I was going to have to bang my head on the wall hard trying to figure out that one, but we got it back. A couple other things I've done on the radio. First off, I really like that. I really like to have 3-prong plugs grounded, so I made a new power cable for the radio. I'm gonna go ahead and plug this into the back. If I can get it to line up right. I'm going to go ahead and plug the radio in. So, got the grounded plug done. Did a tube neutralization. Of course, like I said, I changed the tubes. I also change the neutralizing capacitor from 100 picofarad to 10 picofarad since I'm running American tubes. Like I say, you don't always have to do that. Sometimes you can use the 100 picofarad one in there and still get them to neutralize. I figured I'm going to go ahead and change it because it runs from the trimmer cap over to the plate choke. So I figured if I'm in there changing that plate choke, I'm just going to go ahead and change that one while I'm at it, instead of having to solder and desolder it twice. If all else fails, fine, I can go back in there and put the 100 picofarad back in there, but the 10 picofarad did work. Definitely make sure if you change tubes, do a lot of work on your radio. make sure you neutralize your tubes. When I was doing tests for output to see if the radio was even working, it was actually looking at needing whether I needed to do the neutralization. When I would go into the 10 meter band, I would set my bias, and just a couple of seconds later, the bias would go nuts. It would just shoot up right over 300 milliamps. Shut that down. That's the tube starting to run away, and that's going to start burning stuff up if you leave it there very long. So I did get it to finally. What I did is I actually kind of did a little bit of a neutralization at a lower frequency, where I could tune it. Got it a little bit closer, then moved back to 10 meters, the frequency they suggest to do it on, and fine-tune the neutralization. Very important. If I had let that go, it would have burned up the tubes. It probably would have taken components out on the bottom side of the PA. So got the tubes neutralized. Also did a alignment of the front end, transmit and receive. It didn't need much. This radio was still pretty close in a lot of places. There was a couple bands that needed a little adjustment, but pretty much once I started tweaking things, I was basically going to nearly right back where they were setting before, which I believe is probably because a lot of this, all the other work that I've done on the radio, kind of put it back into where it was closer when it was new, and I don't think it's been aligned much since then. So it's the radio, as far as it's got basically all new electrolytic capacitors in there. I also changed C13. That's a very important capacitor to change. That one runs between the driver tube output and the grid input of the final tubes. Those are in a very hot portion of the radio. There's basically sitting next to a 5-watt resistor and a 3-watt resistor. They are in a hot environment. That tends to wear those capacitors down, and if they may fail shorted. That can happen a lot, and so basically you're going to have plate voltage coming off of your driver going straight to the grids on your tubes, and that is going to make those tubes just run away. What is it, 200 or something, 160 volts I think on the plate, going to the grids. Yeah, that's not that's not going to work for very long. So I did replace that one. I also replaced C131, which is I believe it's in part of the feedback. Well, that one might be actually driving voltage to the grid, but I wanted to make sure that one was changed as well, so I got those changed. One other thing I did, if you remember one of the previous videos, I did have, let's see if I can go back to the front of the radio here. This little pointer light was burned out, and I had thought about, let's see if I can find a new one and replace it with the original one, because I wanted a soft glow right there. But what I actually did is I found some LEDs. They're warm white LEDs, and I like them. I actually put them into a 520 that I had worked on in a previous video for the meter lights. This still has incandescence for the meter and the frequency display, but I do have the pointer light now. So let me go ahead and turn the radio on, and you can see that we do have that light right there, and hopefully y'all can tell just from what's shining on the end of my finger. It's got that little bit of a yellow to it, like an incandescent would. So this one's really close to where it needs to be there, and it lights up really nice right there. So I think that's a really good LED for that right there. Let's see if we can do a little bit of receiving. like I said, I've checked out the transmit on this. I don't have the dummy load and everything else set up over here on this bench right now, so I'm probably not going to do a transmit. The next time this thing does much transmitting, I'm really hoping it's going to be with that contact with the previous owner. One other thing I might have to do during that video, when I was realigning everything, I actually had to have my wife come out here and help me when I was trying to get this close, is trying to get the transmit and receive frequencies dead on with each other was a challenge. I got it close using my tiny SA, locking this thing on a frequency, a definitely known frequency. I think I was using 3.94 megahertz. I set that, make sure it was dead on receive, and then tried to tune the transmit so it would be dead on. The tiny SA, it was getting a few other things on it. It'd be nice if it had a faster scan rate, because while I was trying to change it, I was having to wait, and then, anyhow. So what I did was I had another HF radio tuned to frequency, made sure they were on frequency, that this one was receiving dead on what the other one was putting out. And then while I spoke into the microphone running through a dummy load, my wife was listening to the other radio, because it's a little hard, it's kind of halfway across the room. You're trying to hear over your own voice, to hear what's coming out of the other radio, to see if you're on frequency. And anybody who's done sideband knows what I'm talking about. You're either Donald Duck or you're down in the mud. So she was kind of telling me, okay, yeah, you sound a little ducky, or you sound like you're in the mud, and I would tweak that just a little bit. So when I do the actual contact with the previous owner, I'm probably going to have him make sure that I'm going to make sure I'm dead on frequency with what he is, make sure he doesn't change his frequency, and then start giving me feedback on whether I sound like I'm low or high. And then I can adjust that. It's going to be better, I think, if it's somebody that's at a distance, because even when my wife was in here helping me, she was still trying to have to listen to the speaker of the radio without listening to my voice, because we were, 6 feet apart. So, we'll see how that goes. Hopefully it's close enough that we can make the contact. When I do the contact with the previous owner, we're probably going to have another radio on as well that we can communicate back and forth with in case something isn't working right here and I need to make a fine adjustment while we're in that contact. So the faceplate actually is came out real nice. Got it all cleaned up. All the knobs are cleaned up. So you got this knob put back on here, so it's good to go. Another thing that I had a problem with, and I was so trying to figure out how I was going to fix, because I cannot find a new meter switch. I don't know. I guess everybody else's broke and they needed a new one, so they're all gone. And the only thing wrong with mine was the handle was broke off. So what I did was there was just a little bitty nub of the original handle stuck on there, sticking out there, I don't know, maybe 1/8 of an inch. I actually took some of the acrylic rod that I used for the shaft on the load, cut it down. Well, actually, before I cut it down, and you can see it doesn't look too bad right here. And it works. But what I did was, since there was that nub sticking out, and trust me, this takes patience and a lot of walking away from it occasionally. Acrylic can be fragile. But I drilled into the end of the acrylic rod, just big enough to go over that nub. And it took me about 6 tries, because just about the time I get the little hole wide enough to go over that nub, there's only maybe between a 1/16, not even an 1/8 of an inch of material around that hole left. Well, the drill bit would snag just a little bit and then just shatter the whole thing. break the whole hole out. So it took 6 or 7 tries. Finally got the Dremel to just do the really fine tuning of it instead of having that drill bit trying to ream it out. Got it on there and super glued it on there, held it there, with my thumb over it with some pressure for a good 2 minutes or so, and then let's let it set. And it seems like it's working really good. And I think it looks pretty good too. Of course, super glue and acrylic, it turned it white back there where the hole is and where the super glue is, but it really just looks like it's banded. It almost just looks like a silver knob now, unless you look at it from the side and it's clear. So I think it looks pretty cool. But that's pretty much what we've done on the radio. Let's see where I'm at here. That's on 80. Let's see if we can get anything here. I'm going to hook an external speaker up. Just because I like the speaker in a 101 to me sounds a bit tinny. Oh, I know what's wrong. I have a coax hooked up, but it's not hooked up to an antenna. There we go. Well, let's get down here in the band. So if there's anything going on 20. Give me just a second, let me tune the antenna. See if there's anything on 15. It's not bad. The antenna system isn't tuned to that right now, so But it's receiving, and it seems like it's working pretty good. It's looking pretty good. The marker is still not working. And I haven't had much of a chance to really look into that to see what's going on with it. But that's not a deal breaker on working using the radio. So we'll get in there and work on it sometime. See what's going on to it. I also want to find a new knob. This is not a 101 knob, and the skirt is kind of flat. Kind of got bent. I think something got shoved up against the front of the radio. So that's what we've gotten up to. I think the next step is just I'm going to get that red wire out of there and see if I can't plan a contact with the previous owner and see if we can have this thing officially on the air making a contact and a little bit of back and forth maybe. Thanks for stopping by. This has been a fun radio to work on. It's only taken me 10 months to do it, mostly because about 8 of that was working on other radios. And a good week of work here, and it looks like it's going to do pretty good. So it's still a good looking radio. I think it's still got some life in it, and we're going to play with it. Thanks for stopping by. See you later.